Please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Well, faced with a massive shortage of judges, the government is considering a proposal to raise the retirement age limit. That is the explanation that sources have given Network 18, that a bill could be moved as early as the current monsoon session of Parliament. This comes on a day when the Supreme Court bench, led by Justice Rohinton Nariman and Indu Malhotra, lashed out at the centre and state government of Madhya Pradesh. This over the delay in appointing ad hoc judges to clear pending cases. Ashmit Kumar joins us now to give us a sense of the current state of vacancies in the higher judiciary and also what the government could in fact be considering and whether or not this is likely to go through. I mean, this is an 18-day session and this would require a constitutional amendment. Is this a bit of a stretch, Ashmit?
Well, it would appear to be so. This move to increase the retirement age would require a constitutional amendment, and that carries with it a certain amount of baggage as well, with a political paradigm as well. We'll get to that in just a bit. But first, the Indian judicial system, it is almost synonymous with a large number of vacancies and a long list of pending cases. The answer to resolve this issue, at least the government's thinking appears to be, let's increase the retirement age of Supreme Court as well as High Court judges. Now, currently, the retirement age for a Supreme Court judge stands at 65. The proposal is to take it forward to 67 by 2 years. And as of right now, the High Court judges, their retirement age is at 62. The proposal, the government thinking is that let's increase it to 65. Now, let's keep in mind that as of right now, there are vacancies. There is no denying that. The Supreme Court has 9 judges that are currently empty, 9 seats that are currently empty. And as far as 24 High Courts are concerned, well, the number of vacancies runs into north of 400. So there are a substantial number of vacancies currently. And what's interesting is that in March of this year, there was a 96 parliamentary panel report which also had made similar recommendations. That parliamentary panel report had said that it would help in retaining the existing judges, which in turn would help in reducing both vacancy and pendency of cases in the short term. Now, this brings us to the broader question of what is required to take this proposal forward, and that would mean the answer to that is a constitutional amendment. We've spoken to a number of experts. They tell us that the only way forward appears to be a constitutional amendment. However, let's keep in mind that for a constitutional amendment to go through, it would require a special majority in both the houses of Parliament, and by special majority, we mean a 2/3 majority in the Lok Sabha and the 2/3 majority in the Rajya Sabha again, and that's where it begins to acquire a political paradigm, whether or not they have the numbers or whether or not they have the consensus to take such a proposal forward. But on that note, let's also keep in mind some interesting observations that came from the Apex Court itself today. While hearing a matter over pending criminal cases, we had Justice Nariman, in fact, pulling up both the state as well as the centre, where he said that there are criminal appeals pending for over 16-20 years. Do you know how many people are languishing in jail because of them? Justice Nariman also added that this is absolutely shocking, that I'm personally very shocked that there are so many ad hoc judges in the pipeline. Judges who have retired at 62 use them. So that appears to be at least the thinking in the Supreme Court right now. But again, the broader question, the big debate still remains on whether or not this is the answer towards addressing the problem of vacancies and the long list of pending cases. Back to you.
All right, Ashmit, appreciate you joining us for that comprehensive analysis. We're now joined by Senior Advocate Majid Memon and the former Attorney General of India, Soli Sarabji. Gentlemen, appreciate you joining us. Mr. Menon, let me start by asking you, sir, as Ashmit was pointing out, this will require a constitutional amendment. There has been no dialogue, at least between the government as well as other opposition parties and political parties, to build any kind of consensus. At least that is what we get to hear from other opposition parties on this matter. What we have heard, though, from the government is what the Attorney General has said on the 6th of July this year. Attorney General of India, K.K. Venugopal, urging the government to raise the retirement age of the Supreme Court and the High Court judges. This was at a farewell organised for Justice Adarsh Kumar Goel by the Supreme Court Bar Association. Mr. Memon, is this an idea whose time has come, or do you believe the timing of trying to push this idea is suspect?
Well, you see, there is no dispute at all on the situation being very alarming, that we have long pendency of cases, particularly criminal cases and custody cases. It's an admitted position that 67% of our inmates in various prisons in the country are under trial prisoners who are presumably innocent, which is a matter of great shame for us. And for that, we need to expedite criminal cases. And there is long, 16 years, 18 years, 20 years, the appeals are pending. It's a matter of grave concern. But then, if we want to expedite these matters and see that they are disposed of faster, one of the remedial measures is enhancing the ages of the judges so that they can work for 2 or 3 years more. But that is not enough. I would also say this at this juncture, that, well, why the vacancy? See, there are, according to the number of judges required in a particular area, in a particular district, or in a particular state, High Court judges or Supreme Court judges, the number of judges themselves, sanction strength is inadequate in proportion to the population, number one. Number two, the sanction strength are also not working. We don't have postings of those judges. There are a number of seats vacant, post vacants in various high courts. If you see, you will have great numbers of vacancies lying. You can see in your screen. Now, 56 in Allahabad, you can imagine. Now, this is number two. Number three is that we were also, because as a member of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Law and Justice, I have given my input also that, yes, we needed many things to be done. And one such thing is to enhance the age age limit for the tenure of the judge. But then, you see, the question is, nobody disputes this, that it is a good step, and certainly it would, at least to some extent, wipe off areas, because the judges will work for longer time and vacancies will not be very high. But this is the timing when they are now thinking of rushing to get this done is suspect. That is because the Honorable Chief Justice of India is laying down his office just a few months hereafter, and the government seems to be in dead hurry to catch up and see that he doesn't retire. Well, this is a bit suspect. In political circles, we know that there was an aborted attempt of impeaching him because there were certain allegations against him. Now, it is alleged that that he has indulged in some malpractices, or the government is meddling too much with the Supreme Court under his stewardship.
Sure, Mr. Memon, I'm interrupting because this is conjecture at this point in time. Let me take that point across to Soli Sorabji, the former Attorney General. Mr. Sorabji, I don't want to get into the allegations that have been made against the Chief Justice of India and, as Mr. Memon pointed out, the aborted impeachment attempt. But given the atmosphere, which is vitiated, some would say perhaps even beyond repair, given the kind of trust deficit that exists, is this the right approach without building any kind of consensus? It might be the need of the hour, but is the hour right, is the question?
Look, let's be clear about one thing. Is there any objection to raising the age, apart from any other considerations? We'll come to the timing which makes it suspect. There's no question. In fact, in many countries, judges don't retire before 70. I remember when I was Attorney General, I suggested that they should be 70, but there's no 68. So now, if you are satisfied that 68 is a good idea and objectively is good, then the timing, I don't know, timing shouldn't make it suspect. And if you make it suspect, you should not distract from the validity of the concept. That's the whole thing.
Sure, sure. Okay, Mr. Memon, that's a valid point that Mr. Sorabji is making. And there have been several committees that have recommended looking at the possibility of enhancing the retirement age. In fact, the Justice Venkatachalaya committee had also suggested that you move the age limit to 68 years. There is also the issue of parity between Supreme Court and High Court judges, which again is something that some believe that should be taken forward along with this particular decision. But given the pendency, given the logjam, and given the felt need, of trying to address this, is this not an appropriate remedial measure, suspect timing or otherwise?
Now, let me tell you very frankly that if you leave timing aside, now let us not go into that controversy. The attempt to have greater hours of working or months of working or years of working for particular judges who are already on the bench is certainly a good idea, because that would ease out the pendency, at least to some extent. We have also had many more suggestions. And this particular enhancing the retirement age, you know, the giving them 2-3 years more tenure has been under consideration for more than a decade. It's nothing new, not a new idea at all.
Yes.
But then we have also suggested, for the information of your viewers, I must tell you that, look here, we must cut down the vacation. Why they should have the luxury of 3 months or 4 months vacation in a year? Then we have also thought of having longer hours in the day, 1 hour more in the morning or in the evening. Then we have also thought of night courts in lower courts. Why we cannot have the district courts work in 2 shifts? No, so many suggestions are already there. But then, of course, this is one of the suggestions that if you let them work for 2 or 3 years more, so long as their faculties are okay, they are normal, they are fit enough physically, they can dispense justice without any personal difficulties, I think that is fine. In other countries, I have myself appeared in South Africa, in Durban, in a court where the learned judge was 76 years of age. So therefore, we are just wondering why in the Indian conditions from 65 to 67 would not make much deterioration in his physical faculties. Therefore, on that count,
and
it's a
life
good idea.
expectancy has moved up. Yeah. It's a good idea, but it comes back again to the timing. Mr. Sorabji, let me take that point forward. Again, people are questioning the timing because, as Mr. Memon pointed out, there have been several recommendations, several committees that have made several suggestions. As Mr. Memon pointed out, cut down the vacation time of the court, longer hours for the court is concerned, shifts for the court, a night court perhaps. We just had Mr. Nariman today put out a very scathing order on why ad hoc judges have not been appointed given the large pipeline that we're sitting on. So the question then is, if you haven't moved on any of those other recommendations or any of those other ideas, why would you suddenly now, in an already vitiated atmosphere, try and move on hiking the retirement age?
Well, the suggestion made by Majid Menon, what is pointed out, is correct. But I don't understand one thing. If you agreed in principle that the age should be increased, it should be 68 or 70 or whatever, then don't let consider a suspicion about the timing detract from it. That's my point. There are certain things, it should have been done before, I agree. But it's not been done before, doesn't mean it should be done now. And I don't think it should be right to suspect the Chief Justice, who is retiring, would be carrying on. So I'm sure after 65, their good mental faculties are all very well there. No question about it. Because after retirement, they are appointed some other commission. So that's my point. In principle, I'm in favor of it. And I don't think it's a suspicion should detract from it.
But do you have reservations, Mr. Jethmalani? Do you have reservations if this were to be brought now in the manner in which it is being likely to be brought about, which is without much dialogue or discussion or deliberation?
Who?
Mr. Sorabji?
Sorry, sorry, I didn't get that. Beg your pardon?
No, I was asking you, in principle, both you as well as Mr. Memon agree that this is a good idea. It ought to have been done earlier. You're saying that forget about the issue of suspect timing. But do you have any reservations at all, Mr. Sorabji, if indeed this were to be, and I'm using Mr. Memon's words, hurried through in the monsoon session of Parliament? And it's a stretch because this requires a constitutional amendment, so it may not go through. But would you be worried? Would you have reservations on the process itself?
No, dear. I made it clear that I'm completely in favor of increasing the age, and I don't think the suspicion and all the timing should come into play. Yes, it should have been earlier.
Okay, all right.
But that doesn't mean it should not be done now.
All right, fair point. So, Mr. Memon, you agree with Mr. Sorabji that this is a good idea. It ought to have been done earlier. Now it's finally going to boil down to politics. The government may or may not move the bill in the monsoon session of Parliament. We don't know. We believe that they are mulling the possibility of bringing it forward in the session. What do you think is likely to be the political opposition if they were to do so?
See, Parliament certainly is playing a very important role in this kind of change in the service route conditions of the judges concerned. The constitutional amendment would be necessary, for which there is a mandatory legislative exercise. Both the House's two-third majority in Parliament must approve that. And that can be possible only if there is some kind of a debate, some kind of a discussion with the opposition. Yeah. The ruling party must not think that they can unilaterally conceive an idea and get it executed. It's not that easy. This is not so small a thing. And it's not a question of one Chief Justice of India about whom we are talking of certain outward controversies. It's the question of the entire administration of justice and the institution of Supreme Court. So we will have to be very cautious in taking such steps. But of course, it is a positive step, one small step towards wiping off arrears. But then for wiping off arrears, as I said earlier, we have half a dozen more devices which are easier. Why is the government not filling up the vacancies? Why are they blaming Collegium and Collegium blaming the executive? And therefore, all that should be set at rest.
Right.
I have been talking to Law Minister and I have told my friend Ravi Shankar Prasad that please see to it that on war footing, you don't leave one vacancy in any of the high courts. That also would yield good results. Much more than raising the ages of the judges by 2 years or 3 years.
All right. Well, we don't know whether this bill will be moved in the monsoon session by the government, but in principle, there is agreement that this is an idea worth considering, worth taking forward. As we've articulated, it's an idea that has been put forward, put on the table for almost a decade now. Timing is being questioned. Time now for us to head into a break. Thanks to Soli Sarabji and Majid Memon for joining us. When we return, a special conversation with senior advocate and Congress spokesperson Abhishek Manu Singhvi on the other side. Sources tell Network 18 that the government is considering the proposal to increase the retirement age of judges in the Supreme Court and High Courts. Joining us now is senior lawyer and Rajya Sabha MP of the Congress Party, Mr. Abhishek Manu Singhvi. Mr. Singhvi, appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV18. Well, this is something that has gone back and forth for several years now on whether this should be done or not. We have a parliamentary standing committee that has also recommended taking this idea forward. I would imagine that the Congress Party would question its timing, but would you question its intent?
I would question intent, timing, everything. I have 2 or 3 points to make very briefly. First and foremost, this suddenly out of the blue proposal, a year before elections, without even the attempt of generating a consensus, meetings, parleys, discussions. It's, to put it mildly, in the current climate of divisiveness, distrust and suspicion, highly, highly suspicious.
Okay.
Number 2, where do you get the 2/3 majority, even in the Lok Sabha, without building that consensus? I don't know. Number 3, the real thing to attend to first is to bridge the 62 to 65 dichotomy between Supreme Court judges. You are now perpetuating it by 64 and 67. It's completely unnecessary to create the kind of digressive, unstable ambience by generating a debate, throwing something in the air without getting a consensus beforehand. It's very strange that the proposal is first announced at a farewell function by the Attorney General. It's very, very strange, to put it mildly. Discussed and said, but initiative being pushed suddenly as if it's the topmost urgent priority of the monsoon session is, to put it mildly, completely untenable and highly suspicious.
Okay, you're saying that you question the intent, you question the motive, you question the timing. But Mr. Singhvi, is it at all possible? Forget the fact that there hasn't been any consultation. There has been a standing committee that was set up to look into this issue. It was an all-party standing committee which had members from both the Lok Sabha as well as the Rajya Sabha. do you believe that it is at all possible for the government to try and bring this forward in the monsoon session at all?
Anything is possible with this government. I cannot speak for them. Anything is possible, howsoever unseemly or unlikely its outcome. I don't think any attempt was made except suddenly this is being talked about in this session. Therefore, I have no doubt that the Congress apart, most non-BJP and even some NDA parties are likely to oppose it vehemently. Rest, obviously, I cannot speak for others. There is no actual proposal on the table yet. But the very manner in which this has suddenly gained momentum leads to grave questions. And I think you must first build a climate of trust and a climate of certainty about the motives before you come up with such major issues, because the judiciary affects the whole country. I repeat, if you are bona fide, first bridge the gap between 62 and 65, High Court and Supreme Court.
Okay, that of course is a separate matter altogether, but give me a sense of the process. This would require...
It's not a separate matter altogether.
Sure, this would require a constitutional amendment, would it not? Or is there any other way for 100%. The government to try and take this 100%. Forward?
None, and none. It's a constitutional amendment, not to one but to several articles, both for High Court and Supreme Court. It requires each house present in voting, 2/3. Therefore, I have no idea how this is sought to be brought about. And this is ironical that we are discussing in the midst of a possible no confidence motion, which is a normal majority. I'm not saying the government will fall or not fall, but I'm saying it's very ironical that this kind of a shagufa, I will call it, is being thrown in the middle of all this.
Okay. Let's look at the possibility of alternatives now, Mr. Singhvi. You know, we've just had Mr. Nariman today, put out quite a scathing order saying that that what the government ought to have done in terms of appointing ad hoc judges, that hasn't happened so far. There's been a lot of talk around the possibility of a national litigation policy which was drafted in 2010. We know the problem as far as pendency is concerned. We are aware of the problem when it comes to filling up vacancies. If this, you are saying, is not the best route forward at this point in time till trust deficit is bridged, what could be the possible alternatives?
Far from the best. Far from the best. It is totally not the need of the hour. You do not equalize High Court, Supreme Court judge ages. You do not appoint ad hoc judges, about which I have written 15 to 17 years ago in several articles. You obstruct and delay appointments by hundreds. The High Court pendency is 429 or something now. You obstruct and appoint deserving appointments to the Supreme Court. You constantly return lists. You give homilies but do nothing about judicial infrastructure. India continues to have one of the lowest judge per million population ratio. In the middle of all this, you do this great reform, which is the top quality, top need of the hour reform of making 64 and 67 out of 62 and 65. You don't have to be a lawyer or a judge to say how silly, how digressive, how unnecessary this so-called top priority is. And you have nobody less than the Attorney General mentioning it at a farewell function. Obviously, this orchestration, without taking political parties into consideration, wasting time on constitutional amendments across the country, is, I think, a very sorry state of affairs. You just pluck out a committee report which was in a different context, at a different time, and you say we will take the dust off that committee report and start implementing it. Well, there are committee reports, there's my private member bill about equalizing the age also.
Okay, so what will the strategy be? And we don't know if the government will eventually move this or not. That is the buzz that we're picking up on. It has not been confirmed so far, but that if this is indeed something that the government intends to take forward in the monsoon session of Parliament, you might call it a shagufa, but if they intend to take this forward, what do you believe will the strategy be?
I think, as far as I'm concerned, I've made it very clear. It's whether you call it a shagufa or a trial balloon or a hot balloon, it is there. We cannot speak for the government. When you float a balloon, you may not actually bring it to ground. You do not bring it on the table. We don't know the content of it. But do you think that you have any doubt that, forget the Congress, a lot of other parties, as I said, including within the NDA, will oppose it? I cannot have a doubt about that. within the Lok Sabha where they think they have a larger number, and certainly more vehemently within the Rajya Sabha. And as you know, a constitutional amendment is not something you can convert into a money bill and pass through Lok Sabha, as you've done on many other earlier occasions.
Yes, the money bill route you're saying is unlikely, at least as far as this particular instance is concerned. But Mr. Singhvi,
you never know. It might be tried now also. I cannot.
You spoke of the fact that the government, if at all it does bring this forward, is intending to do so in an atmosphere which is already vitiated. We've seen the Speaker in the Lok Sabha admit the no-confidence motion moved by the TDP, which will now be voted on the 20th. While Mrs. Sonia Gandhi believes that the Congress, along with its allies and other supporters, have the numbers, the government is absolutely confident and certain that it has no cause for concern or worry. What do you hope to achieve by moving this no-confidence motion, Mr. Singhvi? What does the Congress party hope to achieve?
Well, I think two things or three things. One is that the two are really unconnected. I was making the point only of the supreme irony that here the government is facing a possible no confidence and it is talking of two-thirds majority to pass a constitutional amendment which is highly divisive and doesn't have consensus. Second point is that the no confidence initiative initially was really firstly by the TDP. And of course a lot of parties including the Congress would support it. I cannot say about the Lok Sabha, I cannot say about the numbers, but the intent is very clear. It is to bring on the table a very wide variety of serious factors affecting the nation.
For
vendetta
instance?
Politics is one, divisive politics is, vendetta politics is one, divisive politics is another, mob lynching of which the Supreme Court spoke is a third, complete distrust is a fourth, misuse of government agencies is a fifth. So a no confidence motion, it is to bring on the table the totality, the cumulative impact. This is apart from, of course, talking of hardcore issues like jobs, economic failure, drift, jumlas which are never performed or fulfilled. I mean, I could go on. The real point is that it is a comprehensive aggregation of, let's say, 10 major issues which afflict each one of us and the country. And I don't see any hesitation on the major opposition parties, and including, I have no doubt, several so-called NDA constituents or allies who will speak up. Where it will go, what the numbers will be, obviously we are not here to certify. But it is, you can see last time, by the way, that there was a very serious apprehension on the government's part, because you saw that after the 1 or 2 days of the initial period of the last session, every effort was made by the government to disrupt its own parliament session. So I don't think that there was complete confidence. But let's see and wait. If they are so confident, there should be no problem in hearing out the proper confidence motion.
Yes, we will have to wait till the 20th, which is when the Speaker has listed the no confidence motion matter for. But Mr. Singhvi, before I let you go, this will also be a crucial test as far as opposition unity is concerned. The Congress is hoping to rally not just its partners within the UPA, it's also hoping that people, MPs from the TMC, that perhaps even some allies of the BJP may in fact, if not vote against the government, will speak up against the government. This will be a test of this so-called third formation of Federal Front, will it not?
First and foremost, there are different consensuses on different issues. It is wrong to think that the opposition is a monolith which speaks in the same voice on every issue. It need not, it does not. But on a matter like a no confidence motion, where you have parties like the TDP, TRS, etc., and southern parties at one, where you have people reaching out from north to south, I think there's a much larger consensus on an individual issue. An individual issue may affect your state. It may not affect my state. So therefore this regional party may not support it as much as that regional party. But I expect a far greater degree of support on the multitude of issues raised in a comprehensive, holistic manner for the country at large. Number two, I think that the consensus against the government is so large that I have no doubt that there will be a number of parties which are so-called non-BJP, non-Congress, and much more importantly, NDA constituents, which will speak up against the government. Where they will vote, as I said, you have to wait and watch. But if you speak against the government, there's a fair chance you'll vote against the government also, despite being with the NDA.
Well, we'll just have to see.
I query you with one name, but there are many names like that. Shiv Sena is one name.
Okay, you believe that the Shiv Sena, though the Shiv Sena to us has currently said that they're undecided, but you believe that the Shiv Sena may in fact vote against the BJP?
Look, these are not issues of the opposition unity. These are issues of mistrust, discontent and anger by their so-called allies. Shiv Sena is certainly not with us, nor are we asking for Shiv Sena support. But what does the BJP do if a large number of their constituents are extremely angry at them?
Okay. Well, you believe that there might be a surprise in the manner in which the Shiv Sena addresses the no-confidence motion slated to be heard in the Lok Sabha on the 28th. Abhishek Manu Singh, be always a pleasure. Appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV18. With that, it is time for us to wrap up this CNBC TV18 special from all of us here. Goodbye. Many thanks for watching.